I have a well with a large tank that feeds down to the house, and right before it goes into the house I have this 10-inch water filter that I usually just put these 1 micron sediment filters in. And as you can see, this filter does a pretty good job of filtering all the sediment and rust from my well out, but I don't know that I would want to drink that. And that is why I opted to buy this Express Water Ultraviolet Reverse Osmosis Filtration System off of Amazon for $249. I'll leave a link in the description below if you are interested after this video. We'll go ahead and grab a little sample straight from the tap here. And we'll take our TDS meter, which is total dissolved solids, and we'll see where we're at. And it looks like we are about 303. If we look at the back here, that puts us about marginally acceptable from 200 to 400 TDS. So not too bad, average tap water, but I think we can do better. And here is how the water system came. It was shipped in this box, so a box inside a box, but I have to say I'm pretty impressed. I ordered this on a Thursday. It was supposed to come the following Tuesday from Amazon, but came the next day, so that was great. It came on Friday. I went to the hardware store this morning and ordered or picked up a couple extra items because I am going to not only hook this up to the little faucet that is provided with the kit, but also to the ice maker and refrige water as well. So if you want to do that, you might need another T-fitting and a little bit more hose. We'll see how much of that I'll use, but now we can jump into this box and see what is provided. Your water is about to change, hopefully for the better. Alright, we got the manual, which is very nice. I've already kind of looked through it a little bit. It is actually fairly instructive, to be honest with you. All color describes everything in perfect English, which is always a nice feature. Right here we have the main filter system, the faucet that comes with it, like I said, to mount at your sink. I'm going to be splitting this to the faucet and then to the refrigerator, as I said before. Here is the main filter head, which comes with the 3 filters that go down here, the reverse osmosis membrane, the UV tube, I guess you would call it, and then a post-activated carbon filter, which is the last stage right there. Hello. Here is a filter wrench to put them on, which is great. All the hoses and connections you need. It looks like we have some Teflon tape as well. From what I've seen so far, looking through the manual, is everything you need is provided in this kit, which is really nice. Like I said, I bought some extra parts, but that's only because I'm hooking it to two places. This is the ballast for the light. This is a leak detection. So this is the first thing that goes down when you're hooking it up. If there's any kind of water that leaks out of the system and collects on the bottom of the area where you're installing this will shut off the water, which is just kind of a cool feature that they include. So let's get in and unload all this. This is the lamps, the UV lamps, and an O-ring. I believe these are all the filters for the system. We can actually pull this open and take a look. Yep, so here's all the canisters and the filters already installed in them, so all we have to do is screw them on. And then this last thing is our pressure tank or water storage tank. This provides the pressure for the system and is probably the largest piece of the system as far as space goes, space-wise. The first page of the manual is actually fairly nice. It shows you a basic overview of the system. As you can see here, you come from your sink or water feed down to this leak stock valve, up to the 3 main filters, which goes then up to the reverse osmosis membrane, then the UV, then the post-activated carbon filter, out to the pressure tank, which just kind of pressurizes this whole top system, and then out to your RO faucet. Now I'll be splitting that, and one will go to the RO faucet and the other will go to the refrigerator. And then the other thing, and most people don't realize this, is there's waste with a reverse osmosis system, and so that waste goes out to this drain. And I've seen other systems where they just have you drill a hole and then stick the tube in. This actually gives you a coupling, which is nice. I thought I was going to have to buy that separate, but it comes with this system. As we move through the manual here, it shows all the filters, the model numbers of the filters for reordering them, and then the life expectancy of the filters. Your mileage will vary, obviously, depending on your water. I would probably half this for me because I have a fairly dirty well water, as we saw before. Then they go through the component list, which shows you all the components you get, which is very nice. So you know that you have everything and what kind of each piece does and what it should look like. And moving on, we get the tubing quick connect guide, so you know that you're doing these shark bite fittings correctly so that you don't get any leaks. Again, another diagram and also showing each of the parts from the component list. Again, I'd just like to say that this manual is really nice, very clear, very concise on how to do it with all the tips and tricks that you need. So I think we should go ahead and get started. Now, when installing the system, you have to take into account your space constraints. I'll be installing this under the sink, but keep in mind the amount of room you have. You have the storage tank. These things are 10.5 inches or 27 centimeters. Wherever you mount the main filter system, you want it high enough to where you can unscrew each of these filter canisters and pull them off. So I believe what I'm going to do is mount this filter housing up here along the top as high as I can get it. Also keep in mind, if you have the UV system, you need a plug in order to plug in the UV light. So that's another consideration. By far the biggest piece of this whole system is this pressure tank. And so you need to kind of plan ahead on how we're going to do this. I'd like to end up putting this pressure tank over here with the filter housing, but we'll see how that ends up working after I get that thing mounted. There is the main filter housing mounted. It comes with some stainless steel screws. Just mark them up. Would have been nice to see a template, but it wasn't that difficult. Just using a Sharpie to hold it up there and mark the holes and then screw them in there. And as you can see, we have plenty of room, at least a couple inches, to remove these filters out of here. And then we get a plug obviously right there. Now that we have the main filter housing installed, we can see if there's enough room to put this pressure tank over here, or if we're going to have to put it over here. And I think we do have enough room to stick it over here, but just barely. I think we can get these screwed on, no problem. The pressure tank doesn't screw down, it just sits there, so we're able to move that easily around. We'll just make sure we leave enough slack on it for all the connections, and that should be fine. And it leaves some extra room over here for cleaning supplies and so on and so forth. Let's go ahead and go over what we're seeing down here. So this is my cold water feed for the sink. It's teed off to go to my dishwasher through a valve, and then that is my hot water. And what we want to do is we want to tee into this cold water one, not the hot water one. That will ruin the RO membrane. So we need to put the fitting right between where the sink connects and that valve. So we just simply need to kind of turn off that valve, install the provided valve and fitting tee that they provide. Now the valve that comes with it is a 1/2 inch to 3/8, but it does come with a 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter, which in my case I will be using, so that's handy. And it should look something like that once installed with this valve closed. Let's go ahead and open this up and just make sure we don't have any leaks. Doesn't look like we do, so that's good. We'll go ahead and close that up until we're ready for the end install. And now we got to hook up our tubing here. The next part of the install is the leak stop valve. You can see it here going from your faucet to this leak stop valve. And the way this leak stop valve works is it mounts to the floor or the bottom of your cabinet with 2 screws. And then there's this little flapper, and they give you 3 of these expansive little tablets, so to speak. You put these tablets in here, the bottom of this thing is open, so that if any water seeps in, this thing expands and pushes this valve up, and that stops the feed to the RO system. I did read one review when I bought this that the guy said he lived in a very humid environment, and the problem he was having is that these things were going off all the time. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and install mine, but I guess if it didn't work for you, you could always just remove the tab and keep it down all the time. It wouldn't be doing anything, but at least it wouldn't be stopping you from making any water. One thing that is noted in the manual and is just a great idea, don't put any of the tabs in before you've test the system out. You're likely to get some little leaks and drips here, and the last thing you want is to use up one of these tabs or two of these tabs before you've even tested the system. So leave the tabs out until the system's completely done, you've checked for any leaks, and you know that it's dry. A couple things to note about your leak valve here. You want it to be near your RO system, because if your sink or something leaks over here, it's not going to shut that water off. It's not going to affect that at all. But you also don't want it to be in the way of anything either. If I put it over here right under the RO system, then I'm going to have issues with clearance here because there's going to be tubes coming off. It may work, but it's just going to be kind of funky to get things in and out there. Also, I don't think you guys can tell in the video, but my bottom of my cabinet here kind of slopes, probably because it got wet previously or just because it's crappy. Either way, the water's all going to slope to the middle here, no matter what the water is at all. So that's the smartest place to put it if you want it to actually work for your RO system, but it also may get triggered, like I said, if anything else leaks. If you had some chemicals or something in here that leaked, they're all going to flow down to the center right here, and it's going to trigger this. I'm not too concerned about that, and because of placement on my particular scenario here, I think this is the best place to not get in the way of the pressure tank, also for it to work, and also not to get in the way of the filter canisters. So that's where I will be putting it. I'll probably flip it around this way and then route the tubing behind the pressure tank and back up to the filter mount right here. The inside is over here, so the water feeds in over here and then feeds out over here. The manual shows this red tubing right here going from the cold water feed to the valve, and they give you 5 feet of this, at least that's what it says in the manual, and I don't need 5 feet. I only need a very small piece to go from there to there to bridge that gap. So I just cut it, and when you cut this tubing, make sure that you have a nice 90-degree cut on it. Don't taper it at all, otherwise you won't get a good seal. There is the tubing installed. Please note this little blue clip that goes between that fitting. I don't believe it's needed on here. I got to check the manual, but I think this one is different. It doesn't need those clips. But on the rest of these fittings, you need those little blue clips. You can just take like a butter knife or something and push that fitting back out and then push it in. The manual goes over all of this, so refer to the manual. The next step is to go ahead and install these elbows on either end of the filter housing here. One goes on the inside right here, and the other goes on the outside right here. This one will face up. It has this little red doohickey on it that just pulls out. Don't worry about that. And note that both of them already have Teflon tape on them already, which is a plus because dealing with Teflon tape always sucks. All right, I got both of those elbows installed. That one's facing up, this one's facing down. This white tube that will go from the leak valve will move up to the inside, and then this red little pipe that was tucked inside here goes to this guy right here. So let's get that installed and see what other hookups we need to do here. Quick note on tightening these fittings, just do them finger tight. You can always tighten them more later, but if you strip them out, you got to get a new one. Also, don't forget to put your little blue clip on both sides. If your system came with a pressure gauge, which mine did, you're going to have to remove this red tube right here and install this T fitting that they give you. To do that, you're going to pull off that blue clip, you're going to push down on the little fitting area, and then while pushing down on that, you're going to pull that red tube out. The manual discusses how to remove the tubes, so refer to that. One thing I noticed while installing the valve right here is this fitting right here. It's hard to tell on camera, but it is a little bit kinked. And so that may be a possible leak point. We'll have to keep an eye on it, and I might have to extend that tubing more so that it doesn't come in at such a great angle. But just something to note while you're doing it. And there we are with the gauge installed. I had to turn this RO assembly a little bit counterclockwise to make room for it all, but it just turns easily in the little clips that it sits in. Unfortunately, I don't know how well I'll be able to read this gauge with the way I'm mounting it without like kind of crawling in there, but we'll see. So as you can see, the gauge is all the way over here and I can't see it at all other than crawling into the cabinet here and taking a look or pulling off this whole assembly. What I might do in the future, since I do have extra hose, is just get a little shark bite fitting, 1/4 inch shark bite fitting coupler, and then I can extend that gauge from over there to over here and then just zip tie it on here, and then I can just open up the cabinet. The reason that's important is as our RO filter becomes clogged and old, the pressure will go up, and that's why they have it right before it goes into the RO membrane right here. So it gives you kind of a gauge of how your system's doing. So that's probably something I'll do in the future. It's a $5 item, probably cheaper than that on Amazon, but it would be nice to have a little coupler, for them to provide a little coupler. Now they did provide this extra parts kit, which is great. I mean, it comes with a couple elbows and stuff like that, some extra gaskets for various items, and that's super cool. Having a little coupler in there, just a one-to-one coupler, would have been awesome and would have saved me a trip to the hardware store to move that gauge assembly. The other option is I could have put it on the other side of the cabinet had I realized that to begin with. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and kind of assemble the UV light here. There's a quartz tube that slides inside of this, so you unscrew this ring. You slide the quartz tube inside the housing right here. There's an O-ring that goes on the end of the quartz tube, and then this thing screws on the end of that. Try not to get any fingerprints on the quartz tube, but you definitely don't want to get any kind of oil or fingerprints on the bulb, which we have not done yet. I want to install my faucet right where that soap dispenser is, right there. You can see it right there. So we need to get rid of that soap dispenser and get our faucet in here. As I said before, the idea is we'll have a faucet up here that we can get the RO clean water out of, but we also will be able to get it out of our fridge faucet, which will also give us the clean ice as well. And ta-da! It's not a bad little drinking faucet. You turn it on, turn it off. You can turn this nozzle a little bit around. I'd say that was probably the hardest part of this whole thing, is getting that tightened down. I still don't think it's as tight as I'd like it to be, but it's there and it's fairly stable, so good to go. So that's if you want a lukewarm or room temperature water for baking or whatever, right there, you can get it right there. And then if you want the cold water, cold filter water, that'll come out of the refrigerator, which we'll hook up in a little bit here. All right, the next piece of the puzzle I want to address here is the drain saddle, which is right here. And the reason you need that is for every gallon of filtered water you produce, you will have used 4 gallons of water. Basically, water has to wash away all the contaminants that you're filtering out of the system. And so that water and contaminants are going to go down the drain. In the manual, it shows you here where to place this drain saddle. You can put it here, any of these spots right here. You definitely don't want to put it after the P-trap, especially on a system like mine, which I am on a septic tank. So you'd have sewer gases at this point in time that would, potentially infiltrate your system here. So you want to put it before the P-trap right up here. You don't want to put it right next to the garbage disposal, because I'm sure that could maybe clog up that tube, but after it is okay. Now in my system right here, I don't have a whole lot of options. I obviously can't put it up here, so I'm gonna have to put it down here. So that's where we'll do it. You drill, I believe, a 1/4 inch hole is what it says right there, and then you fit this piece of the saddle on, and then one of the tubes connects to it. So let's get started on that. Okay, and there is the drain saddle. I opted to put the input side around on this side. This light over here, so that it was a little cleaner installation and routing most of the tubing behind the garbage disposal here. And then I just used a toothpick to kind of stick in there to make sure I was lined up with the hole I drilled. So pretty easy. I assume that the tubing will slide into that fitting and then down into the drain pipe. So we'll see how that goes.
but that's important. There's a little foam gasket with some tape on it that stick on there, and that keeps it, from, venting any gases or any water, coming out around that clamp. So that's easy. I'm gonna route the refrigerator tubing now, and then we should be able to hook everything up and test for leaks.
I went ahead and ran some of that tubing that I bought this morning that didn't come with the kit to the back of the fridge here, behind the dishwasher, out through that hole, and then I landed it just right here. It might be too long, we'll see. The next thing is to go ahead and hook up the faucet. The instructions show two ways of doing it, type A and type B. It came with everything for type, what is it, B? Or sorry, for type A, with this little collet and stuff like that. But it also, I believe, came with this, what are they calling it, faucet adapter right here. So I'm gonna use the faucet adapter because that's just a lot easier. You screw it in and then it's a shark bite fitting. So let's get that hooked up. We'll get that routed with the blue line over to here as well. And then I bought this T fitting this morning as well. And then we'll connect each of these, the fridge here, the faucet over here, and then this will go to the filter system, and then we'll be able to feed both of them. The next thing we got to do is hook up the pressure tank, and then I think there's a few little connections, but we're getting real close here. A quick note, when I push this black tube into the drain saddle right there, you can see the blue fitting, I noticed that the tubing wasn't going into the pipe or through that 1/4 inch hole that we drilled. So I took the saddle off and I just kind of reamed that hole out a little bit bigger and was able to get that tubing to just go into that pipe, maybe a 1/4 inch past the wall of the pipe. Not that much. You don't want that tubing hanging down into the P-trap below it, but I don't believe that you want that tube just to go into the saddle and then just kind of drain into that hole that you drilled either. So I just wanted to note that you might need to ream that hole out a little bit and get that tubing to just enter into that hole, and then I think that's more ideal than it just sitting there, and then eventually the foam gasket would give and you'd get a leak. Now that we have all our tubing ran, for the most part, we got our waste tubing, the black one, we have our refrigerator one, we have our faucet one ran. We still need a white tube from this guy up to the feed on the far end of the filter mount right here. And but I think before that we need to get our pressure tank kind of situated. There's a fitting that goes on the pressure tank that also has to have some Teflon tape on it. They do provide Teflon tape, so that needs to be put on, and there's some instructions on how to do that in the manual. Okay, I think we have all the tubes run. I zip tied some of them up right over there. The ballast for the UV I mounted with a couple drywall screws on the back there. It's not plugged in yet, but it does have a couple lights on it that says work or fault. Green light for work, red light for fault. I figure we'll test for leaks before we plug any of that in. It's also nice, it just gets it up off the ground in case there is any leaks. We have this valve open over here, so we'll check for leaks for there. And then we attached obviously this one, and then there's the T fitting coming off of here. One goes to the faucet, one goes to the refrigerator. So altogether, I think we are ready to check for any leaks. Obviously, before we do that, because we'll definitely have a leak, we need to put all the filter canisters in. So let me get to that. I just wanted to give you a shot of this. I left the tube for the tank extra long so that I can pull this out, and it makes it easier to put in the filter cartridges. I made most of them long, actually. This one's long. And the only one I didn't make long was the feed, the white feed here, from here to the inlet, because I figure that's easy enough to disconnect down here, and then this whole assembly should be able to literally come out into my lap if I want it to. So I did that on purpose, and I'll probably zip tie some more of these back and kind of clean it up a little bit more, but firstly you need to check for the leaks. There it is with all the filters installed. They do give you a filter wrench, which is great. And then there's another filter wrench, which I assume is for the RO membrane right up here to open that up. So now we have the startup procedure. which takes several hours. They caution you don't run anything through your fridge before you do the startup procedure. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing all filled up and again check for leaks, and then I'll check back in with you guys. So no doubtedly some of you were like, this guy is an idiot. And I did exactly what I told you guys not to do. I hooked it up to the hot water. I don't know why I was thinking that the dishwasher line was cold water. Even as I said that, and as you know, I was hooking it up, I was thinking, isn't the cold water usually on the right? But I did it anyways, and I hooked it up to the hot water, which you're not supposed to do, and we'll just see if I ruined all my filters. I've since switched it over to the cold water correctly, this side, guys. If you knew that when you saw me do it earlier, leave a comment below. Tell me what an idiot I am. Either way, it is fixed now, and I'm just checking for leaks. I did have one up here by the UV filter, so I tightened that up a little bit, and we'll see if we continue to have any more leaks. And here it is all installed. I still have to purge the tank. That takes about a day just to fill it and empty it, fill it and empty it about 5 times. You can see the light on the ballast back there is on. There are no leaks. I did have one leak at the RO cap right here, just tightening it up a little bit by hand, and that went away. It was just a very slow drip. So yeah, everything is installed. So let me purge this thing and then we'll test it out. The system startup is complete. So now for the final TDS test, we had 300 parts per million before, and now with the new system we are at 21. So I would say that's a pretty significant improvement. I'll give you one other tip is put some dates on each of your filter canisters so that you know when you installed them and when you need to change them. And other than that, guys, I am really happy with this system. The express water system came with everything I needed. The results were great. The instructions were great. Altogether, I think it was a great buy. All right, we got our official taste tester here. Go ahead and give it a taste.
Delicious.
All right, well, there you have it.